Here we go. I think we're streaming and we're live. Woohoo! Good morning, YC. It is your ever present and coaches here. I'm just posting this link in the our network. So what's happening in your neck of the woods? What's happening? It's June is here. We're almost through April. Yes, we're almost through second quarter. I had to think about that for a second. So what's happened in your studio? Where are you on track with your goals? What's going on with attendance and things like that? And, so we got a couple of things we're going to kick off with. And one is I have been getting a series of emails from the studio that I used to, OG Begram studio that I have not actually been to the studio since the aughts. I don't even think I went there. I think I went there a few times before, maybe a couple of times after I became a teacher. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's been like almost 20 years since I've been there. And I haven't heard anything from them. And then all of a sudden I'm getting these series of emails. So they're obviously digging way, way deep back into their database. And what they're sending, what their appeal is they've set up a GoFundMe account for studio operations. Now, I've seen GoFundMes for things like our heater broke, or our water heater broke, or we need new floors, something like that. So for a specific thing at a yoga studio, this is the first time I've seen an appeal for studio operations. They're like, help us keep the doors open. We're the longest, running Bikram studio in this area, and we've been around, blah, 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 blah. And we'd like to pay our teachers and pay our rent and keep the doors open and be a part of the community. And so they're appealing to their community to help them with studio operations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is really interesting. I don't know, I've thought that sometimes, for a studio to stay open when there are a few people who really want it to be there, but they are maybe in a spot, in a market, in a situation that it's just like, it's financially, it's not viable. Maybe they should, of course, do coaching first to try and fix things. But maybe it just isn't. It's too hard. Like, they just don't get the members. So what do you do? Because those aficionados, those core group of fans, they want it to stay open.
Yeah.
Could you do something? Like, can you do something then? So crowdfunding would be one way, but it would just seem like so unreliable. You rely on people's gifts.
The first thing is that, okay, they raise this money to keep the studio open for a month, whatever their expenses are, what happens the next one? The thing is, if you're getting, again, in my humble opinion, if you were going to have Joshua here, it would be like, fuck yeah, would be, if you're to the point where you have to do, GoFundMe for studio operations, you're done. I mean, it's like, you're going to have to do it all the time. What that should have happened was a year or two ago, when things started to get tight and when the cash flow was, because at this point, to Vicky's point, it might be that, their DOR. I mean, they're unless they can get like an angel investor that comes in and gives them like 6 months operating capital, and then they get on a program with somebody like a coach or whatever and get things figured out. How can you recover from that? It's not going to work unless you get like 6 months operating capital, which, and this, I know where
that's only 6 months, that's if you're going to fix something, you need to fix it sustainably.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, we're just like playing devil's advocate here. Could it be done with crowdfunding? Could you be like, okay, we have crowdfunding. What's available here? It's these are the options. It's like you pay every month for 6 months, or you pay every month for 12 months. You have to sign up for one of these packages. And if we don't get enough signups for these packages, the studio will close and kind of threaten your biggest fans with this.
That's an interesting thought, Vicky, is like, hey, this is do or die. If we don't get this many memberships,
you don't have somewhere to practice.
Yeah. Although in this case, I happen to know where the studio is. There is a studio very close by that they could go to. But be that as it may, maybe you're not in an area like that. It's like, unless you're going to get, and this really goes back to when you're starting your business, is conventional wisdom and good business practices. You have a minimum of 3 to 6 months operating capital available to you. So that particularly when you're a brand new business, because let's say your expenses are $10,000, $12,000 a month, which is pretty low. Are you going to have $10,000, $12,000 a month in income right away if you're opening a brand new studio? Maybe, maybe not. So that means if you only bring in $5,000 and your expenses are $10,000, from very month one, you're at a $5,000 deficit. So where's that $5,000 going to come from? That's where having the operating capital to do it.
But it only takes you through so long.
Right.
At the end of the day, you have to have something sustainable that's going to keep you going. So how do you do that if you just don't have the people? I don't know.
To me, it speaks to like just an owner or somebody that hasn't been running this as a business. It's like a hobby.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine any other, like, I don't know, a clothing store or a roofing company being like, we need to stay open. Can you crowdfund us to stay open? Like, that's just, it's crazy. Now, I do everything that you guys are saying is I'm on board with too. Like, how does this one-time crowdfunding really sustain you if you haven't figured out your process, if you don't have any, this should have been addressed a year or two ago. If they were looking at their KPIs, if they had a sense of what, is going on, you pivot quickly and make changes because you have those numbers in hand. But like, this feels like, like you said, it's kind of this is it.
I feel for the students though, because
Yeah.
now where I am in Sweden, in this smallish town, I've been asked a few times if I want to take over the hot yoga studio. And I'm like, no. No.
Take over obviously as an ownership.
Yeah, but I really want that to be a studio. That's my point. It's like, I feel for these students. I want that to be this studio for me so that I can go and practice. It's literally 2 blocks from my house. And if I don't have that one, I have to travel like an hour on trains and several buses to get to another hot studio. It's like a full day's project. So I really want the studio to be there, but am I prepared to just like give the money or trying to take over a sinking ship that's clearly not it? I know it's not set up as a business. I know it's a hobby. I know the owner has a full-time job. I see all that. So
well, you could have, because we have clients that have full-time jobs and have a studio, and it is a business for them. So it's not to say you can't have a full-time job.
No, you can. You can.
It's just it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And to Carol's point, what do you have to have? Processes. And you have to have people in place, and you have to, if you're not going to be able to be there, then you need to have someone there in a managerial capacity that is empowered to help move the business forward, right? You just can't rely on the teachers showing up.
No. There needs to be somebody there who is some kind of manager if you're not doing it yourself. So and the systems have to be in place. So
the systems have to be.
The thought of taking something over when nothing is in place.
But then what works. We know what works. I mean, that's sort of appealing in a way, Vicky, to me. Like, oh, this might be like exciting.
Don't try to lead me in that direction.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, I know. I've talked about it numerous times. There's no good hot yoga here in Dayton, in my opinion. And so there's like a space at the end of my block that would be a perfect hot yoga studio. The demographic is exactly what my studio was in Massachusetts. And because I'm the same thing, to get a good hot yoga class, I have to go to Columbus, which is an hour and 15 one way. And then, it's a whole day thing. It's right by the time you get there, take class, blah, blah, blah.
It's a whole day. It's a whole day.
And, it's beguiling. It's beguiling. Because it's like, oh, this would be kind of like knowing what I know now, right? How many things I would do differently if I were ever to do it. But then I just thinking about all the other stuff, and it's not even the money. It's really not even the financial part of it, I should say, for me. It's really more staffing, right? The staffing portion of kind of, Vicky, to your post you put today about hiring, right? And staffing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so kind of going back to, well, what do you do what if you do when you're in the, let's just back it up and say, okay, I'm in that position where my expenses, I'm not making my nut. How do I get there? Right? I'm losing money. What do I do? I can't afford to hire a coach. Well, can you afford not to hire a coach?
Well, we have a guarantee now, don't we?
We do.
For our coaching.
We do have a guarantee for
You're
all
gonna
access.
make your money back.
You're gonna make your money
Or
back.
get your money back.
Or get your money back. But even beyond that is simple things, getting the processes in place. Carol, what did you do when you opened your studio? Because I know
Well,
that's like a long time ago for you, Fred.
a long time ago. I mean, we were very aware of expenses and we put a ton of sweat equity in. Like we were very slow to hire. And I did have a business partner, so that's why I'm saying we, which helped because I didn't have to teach every class. We were both taking the burden. If there were 3 classes a day, we taught 2, took 1, or took 2, taught 1. Like we were there all the time. And we're just slow to hire, and we're very conscious of our expenses. And so I'm not a big risk taker either. So we didn't, we were profitable very soon after and paying ourselves a small, amount every month. So I think that's important. You always have to pay yourself.
Yeah.
That's a cycle that a lot of studio owners get into. Again, they sacrifice and don't pay themselves. They have high payroll expenses for everyone else,
But
not themselves. So, and isn't it slow to hire, quick to fire, that kind of thing? So,
do you remember, Carol, when you and
Aaron,
Aaron, who is not
I know, not Ellen.
Aaron, open, did you have a cash reserve? Because I know you guys were
Yes.
like in your 20s, but you had a cash reserve.
Yeah, we definitely did. I don't think it probably was close to a 3 to 6, for sure 3 months.
Yeah.
Like again, we were very conservative and forward thinking in that way. Like we were not spending a lot where we didn't have to.
Yeah.
And back then there weren't so many subscriptions, and like there are a lot of expenses now that come with running a studio successfully. So I get that would be different nowadays a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I would be paying a desk person at this point too.
Yeah.
There are definitely pieces that I would put in place earlier on.
Well, we talk about, if like Josh has said this too, if he were to open another studio, he would hire front desk before he hires teachers.
Right.
He would have in fact, we recommend 4 front desk people, so that you can have someone there on the, morning, evening, and the weekends. And because I have clients now that have, even with their early AM class, they have desk shifts on every shift.
Yep.
And some I have one client too, actually it's Stephanie Schreiber out at Red Dragon Yoga. Stephanie, if you're listening, hi Stephanie. She always listens to the Roundup. She often on her busiest classes she has 2 desk staff. Now she's grown it to that point, right? And she's planned for that and she has that ability. And even if you're not to that point, having desk staff is critical, I think. Even if you're not able to have 4, maybe you have on the busier classes and then you yourself support the other classes, because I think part of it too is expecting a teacher in a busy class, or even if you're brand new studio, to try to do everything and really have that first visit interaction with someone and expecting them to do all these other things. That's a lot to ask a person to do. And what's probably going to suffer is the things that they don't want to do, like, i.e. what most people do is our Nomad Yoga Studio intro offer, intro month, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to want to do that.
I was talking to someone yesterday about hiring somebody for just for that. Maybe not that exact conversation though, because she was looking into doing a slightly different model than what we recommend to most studios, which was to sell people like a bigger package up front
Mhm.
and then to kind of downsell them onto your membership. So that the first month would be like a transformation package. It would have like a meal plan and a recipe book and the membership and maybe some coaching one-on-one sessions. And then you would kind of downsell people onto a membership after that. So more like starting with some kind of boot camp model.
Mhm.
The idea of having people, because the sales process for this would be a little bit more intense than what we
Yeah.
normally do when we start with like intro, because you're asking people to pay more in the
More,
beginning
yeah.
rather than less. So the process would be then to set up ads that were lead ads, where you get people's information and then you get them on a Zoom call and you sell them this package.
Yeah.
And
That's
so in that case, to have someone who is hired as a pure salesperson and who works maybe on commission basis.
I mean,
So
yeah.
they don't get paid if they don't sell.
There could be, I mean, that can be a model, and a lot of the like higher end gems now are starting to use that. It's like you said, it's like, what is it? Josh was on when he was on one time before, we were talking about exploring with that real boutique experience. Like it's very preferred, it's very exclusive, right? Kind of going into, we talk about in the sales training is the status, people buy status, right? And so it's an exclusive offer, things like that. But that, if you just go that route, to your point, Vicky, you have to have a very well-trained sales force to do it. It's not a yoga teacher who's going to do, unless they happen to be a salesperson. But for the most part, you need to have a well-trained sales staff to do that. And like you said, compensate them accordingly. And so, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting idea. And it totally can work if you have the systems in place and you have the right person or people in the seat to do that. And if you have the cash flow to be until you get the thing going to build so that you can have that exclusive offer or elite offer, whatever you want to call it. But that's an interesting thought, going with a higher price package.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of what we usually recommend.
Right.
I don't know how well it's going to work. I have no
Only
idea. And so far, it was like the owner was doing all the selling, which was a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting concept. Especially in a yoga studio. You see that, I think, a lot in gyms and stuff like that, more like in the gyms and stuff like that. I don't know what it is with my croaky voice today. Anyway, so going back to, well, if you're listening to this, like, well, man, I don't have two nickels to run together. How do I open a yoga studio? I really want to open a yoga studio and I don't have the money to do it. What do I need to do? Well, that's where you look to alternate sources of funding. Like here in the States, you can get like an SBA, Small Business Administrative Loan, right? You could have, although they're going to want to see some capital. They're going to want to see that you have some resources. The other thing that's a good thing that you get, and I got this right after, like in the first year, and I don't know if they have similar in the UK, Vicky, but Carol, if you and Aaron ever did this, is once I got the business, everything up and going in my name, because I bought an existing studio. In that first year, I applied for a line of credit. So I had a line of credit that just sat there, and to have it in an emergency situation, right? Because in the beginning, I didn't, until I got up to the point where I had 6 months operating capital in reserve. It's like I wanted to have that little cushion. In the beginning, I only had like a couple of months in reserve, so I applied for and got. It was not huge. It was $15,000 line of credit, and basically what it is, it's a much cheaper interest rate than a credit card, because a lot of people put stuff on their credit card nowadays. Holy moly! I mean, credit card interest rates are so excessively high that it's a way better option than a credit card, using your credit card. and it just sits there. And it's like, mine was good for 5 years, and then it renews, they redo it every 5 years. And then if you tap it, then there's a monthly payment that is due until it's paid off, that type of thing. Carol, did you guys ever use, or Vicky, was
Yeah, it was, it just triggered, like we did, but only, it was maybe, we were doing improvements on the studio and we got one at that point. I want to say it was maybe 75,000. It was pretty big. And we used that to pay for the improvements on the studio. And then once we had paid, again, very conservative, we paid those things off very quickly, as fast as we could, but held on to it just as a backup. It was nice to have, and just doesn't cost you anything, I don't think, to hold on to it. Just once you apply for it, it's kind of there.
Once you apply for it, obviously there's the application fee, but I don't even think there was like an annual fee to have it. I think it was just like, it was there if you used it, and if you owed on it, you had to make sure you made the minimum monthly payment, otherwise, all that kind of thing. But that's a really good option if you have not explored it. Obviously, the line of credit is going to be based upon your financial solvency and your credit report and all that kind of stuff. But even if you've got one for like $5,000 or $10,000, sometimes just having that little bit in your pocket for an emergency, such as you need the heater, or particularly in a hot studio or something, or whatever it is you need.
Well, going back to like, when is the crowdfunding or GoFundMe appropriate? Like, do we recommend it at any point? So
I can tell you my personal opinion, but I'm like, no. It's like, I mean, I get it if it's a personal thing, but for a business, I don't know. I think that I should shut up, but
I mean, I think I can say that one of my clients, when it was like, they had an existing relationship with a lot of people in the community, and knew that there would be people near and far, because they had been teaching online as well. And they put it out there just because they knew that there would be people that would want to support in some way. And I guess it's a little more on a personal level. Like, hey, I'm going to open this studio. If you're interested, any, funds would help, and it was very successful as a little seed money to start. It wasn't like the only thing that they used, but I mean, again, that was a little bit more, there was a blurred line, I think, a bit more. It wasn't the business asking, it was like a personal, like, me.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it if you want to have investors in your, people do that all the time. That's what venture capital is. I mean, to get a group of investors and say, hey, but typically with investors, they're going to get something back on it, right? It's like, do you want to invest in them?
You could give people something back if they invest when you open a studio. I think it's kind of more okay to go to crowdfund that. I think of crowdfunding more as like something for a startup. To get something off the ground, but it's the running cost is like especially tricky, or when something breaks down, it's not like great. But I think it's potentially more okay, because you could give them like a 1-year membership, or something.
That's there's studios will do that. It's like, hey, I'll give you a membership, particularly if you're opening. But even still, okay, that solves like right away. But what's the long-term plan? Right? It's like,
I'm gonna rush to go to my little
go to your
local studio if it's still there.
Okay, bye, Vicky. We'll see you.
Bye, Vicky.
See you later. Bye.
I don't know. I just feel that there's time and a place for everything. But if you're like in desperation mode, that's the thing you don't want to get to, is don't want to get to desperation mode.
And that feels, it's strange to me also when you said, I haven't heard anything from this studio. Like, have they not been sending regular newsletters or communications about anything in the studio? And then all of a sudden you get a crowdfunding?
Well, it might be that they had been, who knows? But like I said, I really have not been to that studio since the mid, like, I don't know, 2003 or 4, something like that. So it has been practically 20 years since I've been there. So maybe they've been sending out regular communication to people, like active people. I don't know. But like I said, they obviously reached way back in their database.
As I'm saying, like even inactive people wouldn't you continue to send them, I don't know, updates on the studio or like changes?
Yeah.
There's some studio newsletters studios I've signed up for that I've even never been to, and I get regular communication. They're top of mind,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
I
that's
think
a good point. It's like, someone subscribed, you can have it with your email communication, you can have different types of communication going to different segments of people.
Mhm.
Right. And I would do that because I use BrandBot. And it's like, if I wanted to go like database wide versus, okay, this is something that really I only want mostly my active members to know about, kind of thing. So that's where having a marketing communication program where you can do segments, right? You can have a segment. I had a segment for just members, so that if I wanted to send something just related to membership, this and boom. And then I had a segment for just people on a class card. I had one for just people on an annual membership. I had, so I had these different segments already set up in my software so that, oh, I want to send a membership letter. And then I had a segment for my teachers because I realized that. So because I wanted to make sure if I was I learned that one, I sent a thing out to the members and I put that segment. And of course, none of the teachers were a member. And so they're like, Terry, everybody's asking me about this. I'm like, oh my gosh. So a lesson learned, I had a little segment for teachers and that segment got into every email that went out so that the teachers knew what was happening in the studio if I was doing something. So yeah, anyway, so that's a good way you can do. We kind of segued into segmenting membership. So, and another thing is having a plan out the gate and knowing what you can afford, kind of going back to Vicki was talking about someone using crowdfunding to build out their studio, right? This is where understanding, even if it's not your jam, understanding what it's going to take to open a studio. And I did a free coaching call with someone a while back. Well, it was more than a while back, but she was wondering about rents, and we were doing them because we have calculators that we can plug numbers in to say, okay, if your rent is this much money, estimate utilities this much money, blah, 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 then this is how much you're going to need to make this based on this average cost per class. This is the number of people you're going to need to have in each, based on the capacity of that. So there's formulas that we can assist in saying, okay, based on this rent, you're going to need to have X, and it was like, the woman was like, oh, wow, because she's like, I'm not sure. Her gut was telling her that it was going to be too much. And then when we ran the numbers, she's like, yeah, no. And so then we kind of did that and say, okay, this is really what, I forget what it was, but it was about, you need to be looking in this range.
Mm-hmm.
For what your rent and lease and utilities should be. Because when we do what we call our healthy studio calculator, your three biggest expenses are payroll, owner's pay, rent and utilities.
Mm-hmm.
That's like 70% of your revenue goes to those three categories. So making sure you can afford, if you get stuck with a really high lease to start, that's the problem. And we talked about this way long back is, do you have to be in the most shushy part of town? Do you have to be in the most high traffic part of town? Could you be maybe somewhere that's not quite as visible, but then do more marketing? What's the trade-off there? Like, because I was at Pure Hot in January. That's the only location you guys have ever been, right?
That was the original. We opened a second location.
That's right.
We call West County, but yeah, that's always been the location of the studio.
Yeah.
And it's a shopping center with a grocery store anchor,
So
and
that's pretty visible. Yeah,
it's pretty visible, and it's it's not the highest end as far as the rents go in this area, but it's mid to upper, I'd say.
Yeah. It also depends, depending on where you're at in your community, is how significant is parking, right? If everybody's driving, then you want to make sure that parking is easy. So I'd rather go to a place that has plenty of parking, that I don't have to worry about parking, than like, oh, here's this cool building, but there's no parking.
There was a time when we were looking to move, and that was always our sticking point. It was so difficult to find. We were looking at maybe purchasing a building, and but the parking situation, if we were looking at wanting at least 30 people in a class, or when we looked at the numbers, it was like, well, there's 6 parking spaces.
Right.
That's not
And
going
then
to work.
think about it. If you're having back-to-back classes, you
Yeah.
have, a full class coming in and a full class coming out. That means you need to have space for, let's say your capacity is 30. You need to have a lot of parking spot availability, because if you have a small lot of 10, there's less, you're like, it's going to be challenging.
Yeah.
It's
Something
going
to
to
think
be
about.
challenging for sure. So oh my God, senior moment. Do you guys like my bucket hat?
Well, I see bucket hat represent.
I got this at the summit last year. We still have some spots left. Hey, we only have 3 VIP spots left for the summit. The VIP spots are available whether you're staying on site or you're staying off site. And I think we're actually almost sold out on site as well. So if you're thinking of coming and you want to stay on site, reach out. Send us a message, DM us, and we can get you hooked up with on-site if you're going to stay off-site. Like I said, we still have 3, as of yesterday, for 3 spots VIP, and the VIP spots include the GSD day on the last day, the Get Shit Done day, and includes dinner out with Josh and a member of the YC team. So if you're interested at all in that, you're going to hear us talk a lot about it because it is so important. And we're getting some data together, and I'll share this just out with you. If you're listening to this, is that I've been running some numbers of people who attended the summit last year, and I've got about at least, I think 50% now of people that came. And the average increase in business for the people that came to the summit last year is 33%. And I'll say some of those studios have been in business for 20 years. And when you see those really high numbers for a long, typically when a business hits, 15, 20 years, you're not going to see like 20 and 30% sales increases. It's just harder to get there. And we're seeing that with some of our studios that have been long-term. Now you're saying we did have one studio that was brand new. So of course her sales are through the roof. So then what I looked at was, okay, for those of you, if you never took statistics or you forget your math, I looked at the mean average. So the average, to remind you, is you put everybody in and you divide it by the number, and that gives you the average. The mean is halfway. So if there's 10, it's like, who's at number 5? Who's basically. So the mean average of the people who attended the summit last year is 27%. So it's still very, very significant. I think the lowest was like 18%. And the highest, of course, was Susan's Bentley, because she just opened her studio. But anyway, everybody's been, the numbers, they're cranking it, they're crushing it. So the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you really does help you get organized and plan for the next year.
Just to go back, if somebody isn't familiar with what the summit is, it's your first time hearing this on the Roundup. It's a week long, or 5 days, 4 or 5. What did we decide?
It's 4 days. It's 4 days, 4 full days plus arrival.
In Mexico, where
Sayulita.
you are in Sayulita, and you get a lot of shit done on your business. It's like planning for the next year. So it's not just a moment of, oh, here's a lecture here and information here, and you're going to be bombarded with info to then take back with you and like synthesize. This is a planning session, deep dive with your very 3 clear, got to get done next year, with a plan on how to do those things. So, and then what Terry is saying about the extra GSD, or Get Shit Done Day, that's a VIP perk. Like, hey, you need an extra day and like really implement, we're there to help you do that. So,
or if there's other things you want to work on as well. So that I'll talk about one of our clients who has been to every summit we've had since we started. One of her, and we like to call them dominoes, right? As opposed, I mean, goals, dominoes, but I like the idea of a domino, because we identify what are the three main dominoes that need to happen in order for your business to be where you want it to be? And we start with, what's the biggest domino? What is the thing that has to happen first in order for these other things to happen? Right. And then to like Carol said, we just identify what are the strategies for those, and then what are we drill down to the tactics, like, okay, by this date, send this email about this, develop. I mean, it's not just, okay, here's the goal. It's like, here's the goal, here's the strategy, here's the tactic, here's the KPI that's going to measure that result so we know if we're getting it. So as Carol said, I've been to many a conference where like you leave with all this great idea, notebooks and things, and then what happens? Not much, nothing. And we get home, I'm like, where do I start?
Yeah, like I need to decompress, and
I
then
need to
that
decompress.
takes a week to do, and then nothing actually happens with the
Yeah.
information that you, yeah.
So the client I was talking about is Kristen Sapp, Orange Lotus. I just posted something from her today. So Kristen, if you're listening, hi. One of her dominoes was to focus on attendance, right? So she had a goal, is she wanted to focus on average attendance in all of her classes, so that she had a percent goal of where she wanted all the classes to be on average. Right. So obviously there's some classes a little bit more, but on average for each of her class types, and she has 4 basic class types. And so she's really worked on that, and she's talked to the team about it. And one of the things that, like, well, how do you focus on attendance? Part of it is, are we delivering a consistent product? Right. So there's been a lot of like mentoring of the teachers and delivering, making sure there's consistency in the product. So regardless of whether Carol's teaching class or Terry or Kristen or whoever, there's a very high quality product, so that you don't have some classes that are all full because the teacher's super strong, and another class where there's hardly anybody because the teacher's not as strong. Right. So when we looked at her attendance, it's strong across all the teachers. Right. So really focusing on teacher mentoring and education and delivering quality, consistent products. It's about education, about asking, hey, Carol, haven't seen you in my class in a while. I'd love to see you. Right. I'd love to see you. I used to do this when I taught spin for a hot minute. I would say, hey, come join me Tuesdays with Terry. I've talked about that before. So just ways that the teachers themselves can help build attendance. And one thing that we talked about the other day is the importance of, interesting to look at, Carol, I don't know if you noticed this in your studio, is that and maybe it'd be interesting if you have looking at your numbers, not you specifically, but you out there in ULand, is there a correlation between attendance and whether or not the teacher practices it in the studio? What do you think about that idea, Carol? What do you think?
I think it'd be an interesting thing to check. You know, I always felt like the teacher was going, not only can they connect when they're taking, like, oh, come to my class, you know, it's just more casual. But I always felt it made them a better teacher when they practiced.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so, you know, I'd love to check that number.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because I think I remember people would love it when I would take class. They're like, and I would go, and the other thing I always made sure I did is I moved around. I didn't have my favorite spot, right? I moved around the room. Some days I'd be right up front, other days I'd be in the back corner. I move around the room, and and trust me, my practice was not that. I mean, it was decent. It was, I'm not like I can't do this in standing bow, right? Mine more looked like a standing E, I guess, whatever. But people be like, oh, you're going to practice next to me, Tara? I said, oh, yeah, sure. You know, people love that. They love to see the teachers in the room. And I do think that when the teacher's practicing, that we talked about some of the strategies. It's like, hey, Carol, so great to see you in class today. Hey, I haven't seen you in my class. Hey, I'm teaching Saturday. Can you make it? I'd love to see you in my class. Those are simple, easy ways to increase your attendance, not only in your own class, but in classes in general. So because Kristen's been focusing on attendance, we just did our KPIs, and in May, which every class, Every category of class had hit the goal, including her 90-minute Bikram classes, including her 5:30 a.m. 90-minute Bikram class.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, right?
Go, Kristen.
Go, Kristen. We were talking about it, and I do believe it's directly because that was a real goal for her, and we can see it in the numbers. It's like, okay, how, and correspondingly, when attendance is up, guess what else comes up?
Revenue.
Memberships.
Yep, memberships. Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's sometimes it's the thing like, okay, and that was coming out of, well, what are the dominant, what's going to drive me to this goal? All right, well, it's not just say, okay, I sale, but how do I get there? What's this? What's that? What are the components of those things that help me get to this goal? And I really wanted to highlight that because I do believe they're doing so well because they're really focusing on it. And focusing not, just in a way of talking about inviting people, talking about the benefits of practice, she's done some well, no, the special classes don't count because this is for the basic classes. But even having the special classes, like fun classes, right? Different, like she's doing yin and pen.
Oh, yes.
This
Yeah. I got an email.
last week where it's like yin yoga, and then they have an acupuncturist coming in and doing something. She she calls it a mashup class, one every so often that's super popular. And so even those are not like part of her core classes, what does it do? It helps increase engagement and retention and people wanting to be there. So, and that was something that came out of the summit.
Yeah, I definitely, as a yoga studio owner, just thinking back before I had the tools from the YC, it's like I was pulled in so many directions and I knew I needed to make improvements, but I didn't know what would be where was my time most valuably spent, and I think that when we do an audit before the summit, even to sort of like start the conversation and think about your dominoes and it just helps to really focus your energy so you don't get pulled away. It's really easy to say, well, I'm going to go, something shiny new and start going down that road. But if you constantly come back to nope, this is our goal. This is what we identified at the summit as what we need to focus on. Those other things can go away. And if it's important, it will come back,
Right.
around. But it helps identify where you need how you stay on track.
Yeah.
And I'm just so proud of Kristen, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what the summit does, is just helps you really zero in on these dominoes and then where to spend your time, because you can get really busy doing other things that don't make any impact on your business. Yeah. So that's a waste.
Value, high energy, low value tasks, and like to your point, if you have an idea, it's like, wow, doesn't mean you can't do it. You have either a backlog or a parking lot. We have in our Asana, it's like parking lot, and a parking lot is, okay, this is an idea we really like. We don't want to lose this idea or this concept. We put it in the parking lot, and then we either say, nope, we're not going to do that. Oh yeah, let's pull that out, and now let's develop something to go with that. So it's not saying you can't do these other things. It's just like having those things defined just really helps you keep the ship pointed in the right direction, instead of, like you said, and I'm so guilty of that. Ooh, I'm over here, and ooh, I'm over here. Ooh. Although I will say, for the proverbial butterfly and bright shiny object person, when I bought my studio, my first goal, my only goal for the first year, a little over here, was I added up. I had my expenses. I knew what my expenses were. I divided that by the price of my membership, and that was my goal. I had one goal. It was get people on memberships, sell more memberships, right? Every solely focused on that, because I was like, if I get these, and I think it was 100 memberships, when I bought the studio, I had 35, and I ran them manually. Because I've said this a number of times before. I always like to say it. In fact, I have a picture of somewhere I should pull out. It's of me setting up my mind body. right? My data transfer to my body is like setting up my body was my index box was next to me. And I'd pull out the card, the punch card, and I'd count up how many, and I'd put that into my body. Right, because I was seriously an index card with dividers, but really OGs. So I did have like 20, I think it was like 25 or 30 members, somewhere around there, but I had to run them manually every month. Right, so that was my first goal, was to get that done. And it really helped, right? Having that singular focus.
Yeah. Well, and again, you're thinking it's a business and I
Mhm.
need to know these numbers.
Mhm.
It's really shocking sometimes when, we're working with people and I'm like, okay, what are your expenses for the month? And I felt like that was something I always knew. And I knew if we didn't hit that, at the very least, we were in trouble. Like I
Yeah.
just knew that constantly. And so, you know, you have to know these things. I just like, ooh, get the numbers, know them, love them, love her. I mean, it's like you cannot change what you don't focus on. So if you're burying your head in the sand, that's not going to help. You might end up like this studio, taking it all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, just know your expenses, bottom line, and at the very least, focus there first. There's nothing else.
And even if you're not like, I'm like, I always say this, I was not a numbers person. I was a liberal arts major in college. I never took a business class, right? I studied history and philosophy and literature.
But you had hashtag Terry's dad.
But I had hashtag Terry's dad.
You got that education.
So. Yes, I did. In fact, it's a funny story. It's another Terry's dad story. After I graduated, oh my God, a long, long, long time ago, far off place. I came back and worked for my dad I like to say, as an adult. So I grew up working with him, and then I went away to school, and then I was staying in the same industry. I was living in Santa Barbara, California, and he said, honey, if you're going to stay and work in this industry, I really could use your help at home. And I'm like, okay. So I moved back. I was like, I don't know, 25, and as an adult, I like to say. And full time, a real, not just, okay, you're working this weekend kind of thing. And he was going away. He and my mom were going away or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he needed me to do some of the books while he was gone. And I just looked at him like, huh? What? And he said, liberal arts. He wanted, he said, okay, you're going back to school. I said, what? He said, you're going back to school and you're taking bookkeeping. I said, what? No, I'm not. He says, yes, you are. You're going to enroll in NPC, which was the junior college. He said, and you're going to take bookkeeping. And I'm like, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. I said, Dad, you can't make me. I said, yes, I can. He said, go take that class. And I did. I actually ended up taking bookkeeping 101 and bookkeeping 102, not accounting, just basic bookkeeping. And I tell you, it was the best thing I did. It really was, because I got an understanding of debit, credit, balance, of just basic bookkeeping, which is far different than full-on accounting. And so when I bought my studio, I felt confident enough to do, at least in the beginning, I did my own bookkeeping. I did not do my own. I had an accountant, and then they also did my taxes as well. But yeah, so if you don't understand something, particularly nowadays, go to YouTube.
YouTube University.
You can do anything on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Or hire somebody.
Yeah.
Hire somebody. If you don't want to do your KPIs, and even whether you have us as a one-on-one coach or not, we do offer what's called our yoga metrics, which is done for you KPIs. So if that's one thing you would like to have us, you can let us know. We'd be happy to set you up on that, let you know what that costs, and at least knowing what your KPIs are, So yeah, so knowing your numbers don't lie. And to Carol's point, not being afraid. Because what I always like to say is, what do the numbers tell us? What is the story the numbers tell us? Right? Oftentimes you think it's a lead generation problem. And when we really look at the numbers, I have a client right now. It's like, you don't need more people in your studio. You're getting a ton of first visits. you're not retaining them. So when first they started working together, they were like, we need to do this ad, and we need to do this ad, and we need to get more people in. And I was like, whoa, 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 cowboys and cowgirls. Let's back it up. We ran the numbers. We got their KPI spreadsheet updated. We looked at it. I said, you don't have a numbers problem in terms of people coming in the studio. What you have is you're not getting people on your intro offer. And then because of that, you're not getting anybody on membership. They were selling mostly drop-ins and 10 cards. That was it. Right. So again, sometimes you think your problem is you look at the numbers, you figure out, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's not this thing. It's this thing entirely different than what we thought. So that's why having your numbers helps, because you know where to focus your energy, where to focus your time, and then having a plan for that specific thing. And just, focusing on, and it might just be like me, like I did. I just had one goal. I want to get my membership to 100 people. That was it. That was the primary goal. It can be as simple as that. Do you remember what your goals were, Carol, way back?
Oh, no, but I think what that triggered for me was like, okay, if we identify that goal, then how? Like that's the other piece of this puzzle.
Right.
How are you going to do that? Well, we need sales training, or, first visit flow. We need all these other things in place, and we can do that and set a date to have it done by. And that's why the summit is so powerful.
Exactly.
Because it's not only the goal, it's the follow-up, the tasks, setting that timeline on things too. So
it ain't easy.
But you're helping people transform, and therefore your community build and be better, make a better world.
We are making a better world. I mean, this is a very admirable industry that we're in, and we do have the power to transform, help people transform their lives should they want to, right? And we are offering a service, which is an amazing thing. It feels, we talk about this at the sales trainings a lot. Carol and I have done a couple together, and I'm sure you have. What is one story that still sticks in your head that one of your clients, your former clients, told you about something that changed their lives?
There's so many, and the crazy thing is I still have a lot of like cards and notes that people have sent over the years that I don't even let go of them, because it's so moving. Like things you don't know people are going through, like,
no
they're
idea.
probably too tragic to even bring up on the call, but you didn't even know that you were helping them through. And you're just like, I'm just teaching yoga, but it's so much more than that.
It's so much more than that. One of our clients just recently shared with me that one of their clients, I forgot how it ended up. It was, anyway, it's like one of their clients posted something, and somehow it got picked up and quoted in a New York Times article. And in what their client had posted about was how they were contemplating taking their own life, that they were to that point very sad, and they stumbled across this studio and never said anything to anybody, but just came in. And it was a man, just came in and started, I get choked up, started taking yoga classes, and just really started. And because of that, he connected, and he wrote about how that absolutely transformed his life. To the fact that, chills. The fact that he's still here. He did not choose to end his own life, right? He chose to live his life. It wasn't like, oftentimes we forget that we can change people's lives and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. So that's why we're here. That's what our mission is to help you guys be successful, because the more successful you guys are, the more lives you're impacting, and the better world this is going to become. That's what I believe.
Mic drop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think on that note,
really,
that's probably a good note to finish off on. So, so post your comments below. Again, we're going to keep pounding the summit because we got space and we want you there, and we want more people to have successful yoga studios. And so again, any questions, reach out. If you want to talk to a past summit attendee and you're like, I want to talk to somebody who's been there, reach out to us. We can totally hook you up with some of our people that have gone before, and we'll be happy to share their experience. If you're unsure about signing up for coaching, reach out. We'd be happy if you can talk to one of our clients. We just had that happen this week. It's like, yeah, we can sit here all day and say how great it is. If you want to talk to somebody about what it's done for their business, we'd be happy to make that connection for you, right? Because we are on this mission to help you guys transform more people's lives. All right, my friends. Well, I am off next week to help a yoga studio in Indianapolis. I'm doing an on-site there with my colleague Nina, and so I'll be gone there. And then the following week,
You're busy.
I'm
back to
busy.
back.
I'm back to back. I'm busy. I get home next Friday and leave the following Monday to another on-site to work with a studio there as well. So I'll be popping in and out, and yeah, let's just keep moving things forward, and let's make this summer the best summer you've ever had.
Sounds good.
Yes, sounds good. All right, YC, big love to everybody. Have a great